All right. Hilchos beis habechira, perek vov. You know what? I'll use that one. All right. Hamikdash kuloi lo yehoya b'mishay. The temple in its entirety was not on a valley, meaning he was not on a straight surface. Elo b'ma'alei hoho. Rather, it was going up a mountain. When a person, and the Rabbi now describes it, when a person goes in to the Beis Hamikdash via the eastern gates towards the Temple Mount, so first he continues, as he walks, he goes straight on a straight surface, that is, until he reaches the preliminary, so to speak, fence. It's called the Chel. And then he encounters 12 steps leading up. Yep. Rum kol mailo, each step was chatzi amo v'shilcho chatzi amo. It was half amo by half amo high and half amo long. Quite a step, and a quarter of a meter each step high. So yeah, if you consider this, that if one amo is 50 centimeters, so each step was 25 centimeters high. What? 9 inches. So okay. All right. So there were 12 of them, and those were bringing up to the next level. And then he reaches Ezras Noshim. And then the entire Ezras Noshim again was on a straight surface. And then he reaches to the higher level, to the higher section, which was called Ezras Yisrael, Shehit Chilas HaAzorah, which is essentially the beginning of the Azorah. The Azorah being the place where they actually shechted and sacrificed everything. So the beginning of it was called Ezras Yisrael. There was a small strip of land called Ezras Yisrael, and the only way to get from Ezras Noshim to Ezras Yisrael was with special steps, with 15 steps of them. Rum kol mailo chatzi amo v'shilcho chatzi amo. So again, each step was half amo high and half amo long. Okay, now we're holding already by the Azorah. So we were at the Chel, right, which was the beginning, at the level of the Chel. Then there were 12 steps. It was Ezras Noshim. Then there were 15 more steps. Each one, again, we have to remember, each one is chatzi amo. It's kind of getting high here. And now it continues the strip of land, Ezras Yisrael. Again, it was straight surface. So within the Azorah itself, in the a bit further down, there was another step which separated between Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, essentially. And that step was 1 amo high. The oleo duchon, and on that step there is a special podium. Platform, yeah. Which has 3 steps. Rum kol mailo chatzi amo v'shilcho chatzi amo. And again, that particular what did you call this? Platform. It was also, each step was the same type of steps, half amo and half amo long. Yep.
The thing you call a step, that's 1 amo, that wasn't really a step.
It was yeah.
To be able to get up, that's 18 inches.
Okay, so right, so he calls it a milo. Obviously, in this particular context, he's trying to describe how tall was the whole situation, the physical reality of the situation. So he calls it a step, which it was technically a step, but it was a bit too tall.
1.5 feet.
Yeah, exactly. Weiter. Nimtzas Ezras Koyanim. So we find the Ezras Koyanim to be Govoyal Shel Yisrael Shtei Amos Umechze. He was taller than the Ezras Yisrael by 2.5 amos. Good. Let's say that. Weiter gefahren. Umehalech Kol Ezras Koyanim, and then he walks through Shtei Amos Umechze. Umehalech Kol Ezras Koyanim v'Hamizbeach, and then he walks the whole Ezras Koyanim and the area where the Mizbeach was. Uvein Ulam v'Hamizbeach b'Shoveh, which was all that area was all straight land. And then he reaches the preliminary area of the main building. Again, by walking up 12 steps. Each step was half amo high and half amo long. And the ulam and the eichel were all straight land, flat land. Nimtzo, so we find a summary of the whole thing. Goiva karka eichel al karka shara mizrach shel beis esrim ushtei ames. So we find that the heichel and the ulam was higher than the land through which you entered from the eastern gate, which was right across. In other words, from directions way. It was right in front of the heichel. So the heichel was higher, but 22 ames than when you just entered Beis Hamikdash from the eastern gate. The goiva shara beis esrim amo, and the height of this gate of the Harabais, of the Temple Mount, in other words, over there in the eastern gate, was 20 amos. Nim lefichoch, therefore, ho'imed keneged shara mizroch, if you stand over there at the eastern gate, eina roye pesach ha'eichel, you can't really see the entrance of the heichel because that was 22 amos high. So there were 2 more amos that you couldn't see, right? And therefore, also koisel shal gabe shar zeh, and therefore they made the walls of that particular gate lower, that if you stand in the Har HaMishcha, which was the mountain right across, facing the Eichel, there's a halacha that says that when you spray the blood of the poro, you actually have to be kind of facing. So therefore they made that gate over the wall over there in the front a bit lower. So if you stand 22 amos high, you can still see directly through to the Har HaMishcha. And otherwise, if you make the wall too high, you won't be able to look through because even though it's exactly because the walls would be a barrier. Okay, now. Now that we know more or less how the area in front of Beis Hamikdash actually looked like, now he's going to discuss the various chambers that was in that particular area we just discussed. There were various chambers. Tachas Ezras Yisrael, Psuches Ezras Noshim. So, like we just mentioned, so we had the Ezras Yisrael, which was basically the next area to which you got to, leading up from Ezras Noshim to Ezras Yisrael via 15 steps. So, which was basically a strip of Beis Hamikdash, already that part of the Azoro, but that particular area was hollow beneath. It was actually had various uses for, as we'll see soon. And the entrances to those chambers, even though the actual chambers were in the area of Ezras Yisrael, but to enter those chambers were through the Ezras Noshim. In other words, before you go up the 15 steps, on the sides, or more or less, this is how usually it's being described. Shishom, in those special chambers, beneath the Ezras Yisrael, Shom Levim Noisnim Hakinoiros. That's where Vanevonim Vamitziltaim V'chol Klashir. That's where they used to place their harps. That's where they used to place and store all the various instruments, playing the musical instruments which they used to play on the steps. On that platform we mentioned before, was basically more like a duchon. Usually it's like a podium. That's like when usually you stand and you announce things. That's what usually the word duchon means. Exactly. So in that duchon that we mentioned before, that platform that leads from Ezras Yisrael to Ezras Koyanim, hoyu alevim imdim. That's what the Levim used to say. B'shosheim shir ala korban. So when they used to sing special shira, when they used to sacrifice, they used to stand on that podium right there. So they used to take out the various instruments and they used to go up on that podium. And that's where they used to sing their songs. Okay. Those chambers now, so we have a very interesting situation. The Ezras Noshim itself is, even though it is part of Beis Hamikdash, but it's not as holy as the Azor. Now, these chambers are open to Ezras Noshim, but the actual location of those chambers were beneath Ezras Yisrael. So what kind of category does it have? Is it Ezras Yisrael because it's technically in the area of Ezras Yisrael, or is it more Ezras Noshim because it is actually open to Ezras Noshim, and the only way to get into them is through Ezras Noshim? So what is it? Ezras Noshim or is it Ezras Yisrael? The chambers, the chambers which are built in the holy part, but they are open to the mundane. If their structure In other words, the roof is even with the floor of the Azara, and like in this particular case, right? It was a chamber built under the actual ground. So technically, the roof of the Azara, if you wouldn't have known there was a chamber over there, you wouldn't have known it's there, because there's not like a special indent in the floor which would show, okay, this is the chamber. It was the whole the same. It was one big floor of the Azara, and there is a chamber over there, but it doesn't actually show on top, meaning it's not sticking out. The floor is the roof. So in such a case, so the inside of those chambers is mundane, and the roof, that is holy, meaning the Azara, obviously the Azara is holy, but the inside is not, meaning if it would have been standing out, it would have had a special halacha for itself, but because it's not sticking out, it's just a floor, so the floor is the floor of the Azara, but the inside is not part of the Azara because it's not sticking out, it's nothing special in the Kodesh itself. Right, but it's interesting that the Rabbi points out that if it's not straight, meaning it's not even, if it wouldn't have been even, then what? Let's see. But if they're not even, even if they wouldn't have been built in the Mikdash in the Azara itself, imagine those chambers. It wouldn't just be a straight floor. It would have been like an indent, like sticking out of the floor of the Azara. Even if it would be technically in the area of Eretz Yisrael, it wouldn't have had the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael.
Maybe under. Maybe without that.
Under for sure not. Dr. Azar, under in the chambers itself for sure not, because that's not the Azara.
The God would have been a little bit underneath the floor with a little indent. Maybe that be hard. Sticking up, why should not sticking up here?
Again, because it's not part of the Azara. That's the chamber. That's not the Azara. The Azara is where you stand in your shecht. This is not it. Yeah. Lefichoch, therefore, gagim elu, in such roofs, such coverings. In other words, in a case where it sticks out, it's not actually even with the area of the Kodesh. Again, because even though you could argue that technically it is in the area that you would call as Israel or the Azara, but because it sticks out, because it's not even.
They didn't build it that way. They built it out and it should be flat.
Yeah, but the Rabbi says it's a very technical thing. How do you view something that is built in an area, but it doesn't stick out? You could argue, this chamber is not technically part of the Azara because it's used for a different use. Zog the Rambam, you're right. If it's not sticking out, meaning it just looks like one surface of the Azara, then it is part of the Azara. But if it's sticking out of the Azara, it's not part of the Azara. If the floors are not even, it's not part of the Azara because it sticks out of being. So it's not Azara. It's not Azara. Now, but what would be the case if it would be the other way around? If those chambers were built in the mundane area, but they were open towards the holy. In other words, here in such a case, in our case, in the case where we mentioned before, these special chambers where they kept these musical instruments, they were built in the kodesh, but the only way to get in was through Ezras Noshim, which was chayil. But what if it would be the other way around? If the offices are built, if those chambers,
They had a door from on top coming from Kodesh.
So there were offices like these. They were actually built in the Choil, but the entrance was towards the Kodesh, like on the sides, usually on the sides of the actual Azara. There were those special chambers in designated areas, which they themselves were built in an area which technically is not part of the Azara, but the only way to get in was through the Azara. So what is it? What kind of halacha does it have? So even though the actual chambers are built in the choil because they are open towards the Azara, they are considered as part of the Azara. So therefore, imagine you built an office for yourself nearby the Azara. All right? It's not kodesh, it's a choil. Right. It's a choildika situation, a choildika place. This real estate is choil, but it's open towards the Azara. Can I eat my shlom over? My chatos over there? Can I eat it over there? The answer is yes. Why? Because it is open towards the Azara. Therefore, I can eat it. But so what is 1 second? It says mamish part of the Azara. Doctor, no. But you cannot shecht over there. So you can eat over there the kochim, but you cannot shecht over there. So it is only considered kodesh to the matter of eating kodesh over there, but you cannot shecht over there. And if you come in over there impure, it's not considered like you're violating kodesh. And so therefore it's only considered kodesh legabe eating kodesh over there, but nothing else. That's what it sounds like from the Rambam. Right. I know, very, very convenient.
Yeah, about
Yep. Right. And the roofs, not only they are built in the chol, they're sticking out of the azor, so they're nothing shebenaf. It's kodesh. You can't even eat it there. Exactly.
The base of part.
What?
The base of part with the Kohen Gadol.
Right. I think it's one of them.
I
I think it's one of them. Yeah, it's built in the chol. It's not part of the azor, but it is open. It is open towards the azor.
It's first to be able to behold. That's right. That's what comes out.
Yep. Amichiles absuches laazoro kodesh. The various tunnels which are open within the azoro, they're all kodesh. The absuches beis chol. Now, what was so special about the tunnels? The tunnels are known to be going everywhere in the Temple Mount, under the kodesh, under the everywhere. So what kind of gedol do they have? Are the kodesh, are the chol? So it says the same rule applies over here as well. If their entrance is open toward kodesh, to the holy area, so it's also considered kodesh. But if it's open towards the beis, which granted is not just regular chol, but it's not kodesh, so it's not considered kodesh. It's chol.
They could eat there also.
Where?
In ones that are kodesh.
The ones that are open, yeah.
Right.
The window seals and the width of the walls. In other words, let's say you have the wall, right? The wall of the azara. Is the width of the wall of the wall of the azara? Is it considered part of the azara, or is it outside of the azara? So the Rambam says, "Kilifnim bein la'achilas kodesh kodoshim bein letumo." It's considered like part of the azara mamash. You can eat kodesh over there, but unlike the chambers which are built in chol but open to the kodesh, the width of the wall and window seals, if there were, you're not even allowed to enter as a tumah. It's considered mamash as part of the azor.
As soon as you start to enter in, go in the first
Exactly.
side of the gate, that's where.
Exactly. Yep. Weiter. Beis shirotzu lohisef el Yerushalayim. Now the Rambam goes into a very interesting question. Until now, we were discussing a very interesting idea. The idea that certain area is designated as kodesh. The beis has various levels of kedusha. You have the Snoshim, you have the Sisrael, you have the Kohanim, the Ulam, and the Eichel. Very good. Now, how can I expand it? Is there a way that right now it's limited in a certain area in Temple Mount? Can I expand this area of kedusha, of the Azara, of the Ulam, whatever that is? Zokter as a beis shirotzu. Huh? 1 second, we'll get there. Beis shirotzu lohisif al Yerushalayim, oy lohisif al Azara. The Beis has the right to add area to the Kodesh, to expand the Azor, and to expand what we call the Temple Mount. And they have the right to continue Azor Adam Mokim Shirtzu Meharabais from the Temple Mount. They are basically allowed to expand Yerushalayim as much as they want. Ad mokim shirtzu. Lim shechem is Yerushalayim. Ad mokim shirtzu.
The Azara, they can make it in any place in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, but where is Yerushalayim? Velim shechem is Yerushalayim. Ad mokim shirtzu. They can expand Yerushalayim as much as they want. Yeah. In other words, the Azara cannot be in Tveria. But the Yerushalayim, you can expand Yerushalayim, and then you can expand the Azara as much as you want to.
Okay, so it has to be
In Yerushalayim, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But you could make the walls of Yerushalayim bigger.
Yeah, you can bring the Chemis Yerushalayim till Tveria.
Yeah, that's interesting. Ad Harabais. There is a limitation. Also, this is Ad Harabais.
I don't know, by me it says Ad mokim shirtzu meharabais.
Meharabais.
In other words, in the Harabais, right, you're right. So in the Harabais, the Azara can be as large as the entire Harabais. And Yerushalayim can be, exactly, the whole 500 by 500. Meaning that you can shech technically a come wherever you want in the Harabais, including the Ezas Noshim. Ezas Noshim, by the way, is a very technical name for a very technical place in it's not Kodesh. It's not. It has very special halachas, but it's not Kodesh, like we just saw. Exactly. So you can expand Yerushalayim as much as you want. And then the Harabais, you can expand. What? You can eat kochim kan.
And you can't expand the Harabais.
The Harabais you can expand.
Even
You
though-
cannot expand the Harabais. The Harabais is the Harabais.
That's
The Temple Mount. You cannot expand. I mean, I don't know. You can maybe somehow expand the actual mount facing. Yeah. אין מוסיף מהעיר או על הזורס, אלא על פי מלך ועל פי נובי ובורים מתום.
extend the noshim as much as you want.
No, you can extend. That's noshim. That's noshim is just an area of choil in the area of beis hamikdash. The chiddush of the Rambam over here is that you can expand. Well, chiddush. The halacha that the Rambam says is that you can expand the azoro over the entire Temple Mount, the entire Rabbi is 500 by 500, and Yerushalayim you can expand as much as you want, and the Beis has the right to do it. Yeah, but now we'll see in the next halacha that it's not so simple. Beis cannot just wake up in the morning and decide, okay, let's expand Yerushalayim till Tveri. En meisif mala'ir ol al azores, elo al pi melech ve'al pi novi u'burim ve'tumim ve'al pi saned u'shim ve'echod zkeinim. You cannot add on Yerushalayim or on the Beis Hamikdash, the Azoro, only if you have a king that agrees. There'll be Novi and a prophet.
No, or.
Says Ve'al Pinovi.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or 4.
Ve'al Pinovi. You need a king to order this. You need a prophet to agree with this. U'Be'urim V'Tumim. You need Urim V'Tumim with the Choshen of Kohen Gadol to agree with this. Ve'al Pi Sanedrin Shishim Ve'echod. And you need all the Sanedrin to agree with it. Kitzer. And just like I showed to you to Moshe Rabbeinu had that. So Moshe Rabbeinu was a king. And we had all of and we had the what's called the and the Novi, yeah, of course.
What did they do together that made they could set a precedent?
So Moshe Rabbeinu,
Melech Novi.
Melech and Novi, and Urim V'Tumim
Now we're talking
of the Kohen Gadol, and Moshe Rabbeinu was also the Nasi of Beis. It says there's a thesis in Sanhedrin that explains Moshe Rabbeinu was the Abad of the Sanhedrin, was the Av Beis Din. V'cheitzad meisif malo'ir, and how do you actually do this? Practically speaking, now the halacha. Let's say tomorrow we got a king, a Novi, and all these people come together. How do we do this? So the halacha is like this: Oisim Beis Din shtei toides. You bring 2 sacrifices of toida. V'loikhim lechem chometz shebohem. V'oilchim beis nachar shtei toides. U'shtei toides ze achar zo. So you have 2 animals following one another, and you have basing following those 2 animals. V'imdi bekinoires v'nivolim v'tzilzol al kol pino u'pino v'al kol even v'even sheb'Yerushalayim, and you're filling up Yerushalayim with a lot of song, with a lot of music. V'imim arimimcha Hashem kidilisoni, and they say this pasuk or this kapitel, and they follow those teidos and they continue until they reach the point where they want to expand the till, and that's where they stand. And you eat
One of them.
Yeah, one of those. And the other bread is burnt. Now, which one do you burn? Which one do you eat? The Novi will tell you. The Novi will tell you, you'll eat this, and this one you burn.
When did they check the animal?
What?
They just took the bread. They didn't take the animals.
No, they took the animal. They followed the animal.
No, 1 second, but he's going to say a good point. The Toido is mashman from the Rambam. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. The Toido, who are the Toido? Shnei Korbanos Toido. What happens with Shnei Korbanos Toido?
Looks like they were just
Interesting. Okay, I don't know. It's
Let's see, your Gimel starts to talk about it. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like they actually use the Korban Toido. Like how they explain the Korban Toido, but then he speaks only about the actual bread. Okay, it doesn't sound like they were actually you had the actual animals there, right? That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they actually
They were
the Korban.
Mekadosh it only with the lechem.
Right. So why does it say Korban Toido? Okay,
But
Lachme Toido.
No, I'm saying, but in order to have lachme toido, you have to bring a carbon. So maybe they brought the carbon.
So they
And
were
they took-
sacrificing Beis Hamikdash, and they took
And
the
then they
lechem.
took the lechem to the new place, to the Mekadosh.
Maybe. Okay.
They're
Never
going
happened
after,
anyway.
they're going after the todos.
The Toidos, the 2 lechem, not the animals. Yeah.
No, but they're going after state todos. It sounds like they're going after the animals and they're still.
I know. Okay, absolutely. But
They
yeah,
got
but
shepherd.
he explains over here that it refers to the actual lechem, not the actual
I
animals. So
understand.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, but it's interesting the lotion. You're right. Okay. Same thing also. If they add on the azoro, they mekadesh it. In other words, they sanctify it with the shiore mincha, with whatever is left from the mincha. Ma Yerushalayim, atoida shenecheles b'mekadashto. What Yerushalayim, the toida, the lachme toida that you can eat in Yerushalayim, actually sanctifies it. Afazoro shiore menocha she'ein necholim elo bo. Same thing also, the shiore menoches, the leftovers of the menoches, that you can only eat them in the azara. Hem shemekach shnei. In other words, you have to find a unique item related to flour. It seems like. That you can only eat it. So the bread you can only eat Yerushalayim. The lachme toida you can eat all over Yerushalayim. So toida that's specifically made for Yerushalayim, you can only eat in Yerushalayim. They will sanctify. Same thing also about the azara. You want to sanctify the azara, you have to find something unique for the azara. You can only eat it within the azara, which is what shiore mincha. Yeah, shiore mincha. They were leftovers of the mincha. Same thing too. You wanted to expand to the end of the beis, you eat it by the end of the beis. Yeah. If you didn't do it like we just explained, it is not a complete sanctification. Why did Ezra do it? And he wasn't, and he didn't have Urim V'Tumim. So he did it just for the memory, for the memory. The place was already sanctified. He came to Beis Hamikdash, was already Beis Hamikdash. Then why did he have to do this again? You have to do this again to remind everybody, okay, guys, in the Mitzvah Hashem, Mashiach will come going Gichin, and you would like to expand the Azor even more, you're going to follow my lead. You're going to do like what I just did. So yeah, but he didn't. He didn't have he didn't have a king, nor did he have Urim V'Tumim. Then why was it still holy? He was already holy since the time of Shlomo HaMelech. When he sanctified Beis Hamikdash, he sanctified it for the time and for all the generations to come. And therefore, come the Rambam and says a big chiddush that not all the Rishonim agree with him. That he says like this: you can sacrifice right now all the korbanos in Beis Hamikdash, even though you don't have the ulam, even though you don't have the actual structure, the main structure of Beis Hamikdash. And you can eat the kodesh kodoshim over the entire azara, even though it's destroyed. And even though it doesn't have a wall,
You don't have
right? It's about the location. It's not about if it's what.
You don't have a mizbeach.
Yeah.
Location, not the
No. It says you gotta have a mizbeach. But let's say you built a mizbeach, you don't need walls to actually separate the azara from everybody, from everywhere else. It has the kedusha since the time of Shlomo HaMelech. And Yerushalayim still retains its holiness, even to this day, the original holiness of Shlomo HaMelech. And you can eat kochim kalim, the ones you shecht in Beis Hamikdash, and the lachmi toy that you say you brought in Beis Hamikdash, you can eat them in Yerushalayim. Today's Yerushalayim, even if there is no wall.
How do you say from this you have to have a mizbeach?
What?
How do you say from this we have to have a mizbeach?
We must have a mizbeach because you cannot sacrifice without a mizbeach. What?
They had bombers. They had to do it all the bombers.
No. But the Rambam, that it changed back and forth. But to this point, the Rambam says that in a different place that you must have a mizbeach and you must sacrifice in the mizbeach. Davki Yerushalayim in beis habechira, you cannot sacrifice in the bama. But the chiddush is that if you have your mizbeach, you can technically sacrifice. You don't need the rest of the structure. You just need a place right now.
And you can
Yep.
build your own base,
Huh?
you can build your own mizbeach.
Well, you need to know what the mizbeach, what's the exact place of the mizbeach. You can't just come and build the mizbeach. You need Chag Eschal Yom HaLochi to show them exactly where to build the mizbeach. You need to be a novi for that.
In other words, the walls don't matter, but the place. And
But the altar matters. Yeah.
Okay.
Mizbeach, I don't want to-
thing that I told that you had to get out of
That was a different thing. It was a chiyuv of Pesach.
That was about 1972.
Right.
They had Yerushalayim.
Right, because Pesach is a special din in itself. It's not like the rest of the korbanos. Well, it's a whole different thing. What? Okay, yeah. Okay, let's continue. For the same reason, because the holiness, the original holiness of Shlomo HaMelech was sanctified at the time, and it continues. The sanctification continues forever and ever. Sufek the Rambam himself. Why do I say when it comes to Mikdash in Yerushalayim, that the sanctification continues forever as well? when it comes to Shvis, about keeping Shmita, Maisres, V'chayetz b'hem lo yikid shelo osid lo avodah. Today, according to the Rambam, it is only mid'Rabbanon, lefi, because shekdushas hamikdash v'Yerushalayim mipnei hashchina. The reason why Beis Hamikdash and Yerushalayim is holy is because it's the beis habechira of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose it, and it's at the Shechina, and you cannot move the Shechina no matter how many Romans will come. The Shechina is still there. You can't move it away. Shechina, the resting place of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Yerushalayim is forever and ever. Nothing yet. No, you can't change it. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises the Yidden that He will desolate. I think desolation was desolate. I will desolate your temples. Then what do we see from here? The Aval Pishishem, even though they're desolate, Bigdushos and they're still temples, they're still mikdash, they're still holy. Right. Shemim means abandoned. There's nobody there. Yeah, empty. Aval Chiyuv Oretz B'Shvis U'Maisros, but the reason why Yidden have the chiyuv of Maisros and Shemitah is only because the Yidden have conquered it together and delivered it together. But once Eretz Yisrael was taken away from the Yidden, so the conquering of Eretz Yisrael was cancelled, and therefore there is no more obligation on the Yidden to keep Shemitah and to bring Maisas Midei Raisa according to the Rambam, because it depends on who's controlling the land. Is it controlled by Yidden or not? Was it conquered by Yidden or not? What? So there's a special Maila of Eretz Yisrael and all that, but the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael depends on the fact whether or not the Yidden are in control, full control or not. Sharein Eretz Yisrael. Because it's not the land, because it's very interesting. The Rambam describes Eretz Yisrael. What's Eretz Yisrael? The land of Israel. If it's not conquered by Israel, even though there are Israel living there, it's not conquered, it's not owned, it's not held by Israel. It's not Eretz Yisrael.
That's what we're learning. There's 2 days of Yom Tov in this particular day.
So not everybody agree with the Rambam. It's not Pashut.
Okay, but that's Rambam Shita. That's how it shows up.
It's also the whole thing of two days has nothing to do necessarily with Chutzlo. It's about what the Shluchim reached. Yeah. The Kevon Sholo Ezra. What?
No.
No.
Let's not get into it.
Okay. Yeah. This is highly political, very sensitive. Right. The Kevon Sholo Ezra v'Kidsho, and once Ezra came back and he sanctified the land again, Loi Kidsho. You say 1 second, he came back and he conquered it, right? Didn't he? So no, Loi Kidsho v'Kibu Shelo b'Chazok Yishirziku bo. They didn't come in force and against everyone and with a fire and sword they conquered the place. No. They just came and they were allowed to settle back in the land. It has to be kibush. Yeah, that's the point of the Rambam. It has to be kibush. It has to be forceful conquering. You have to show your bias. It's a whole sugya in Gemara. To show your bias, you can't just I happen to be here. You actually have to come and show your ownership. Nesra, when Ezra came back, they were allowed by the grace of the king of Persia to come and settle back in Eretz Yisrael. ולפיכך כל המוקים שהחזיקו ביום לבבל ונזקדש בקדושת ספר השנייה הם מקודש היום. Yeah, it still has holiness today too. ואף על פי שנלקחו האורץ ממנו וחי בשביל המעשה לדרך שביארנו בהלכות תרומה. So in the place where Ezra came and he conquered that particular area, he didn't reconquer Eretz Yisrael, just a certain particular area. He didn't get Eretz Yisrael back. He was allowed to settle there. Did he actually? There was a Psakinyan there, whatever. But he was there with the grace of the king Kosh. Right. And therefore, only the area when he came, not the entire Eretz Yisrael, only where he was, that's fine. But not the entire Eretz Yisrael.
Did he need permission from this king?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, we know he needed permission. We know he needed permission politically. But to make a kingdom that required